Next up, we have an exciting armchair discussion. I would like to welcome Seth Hanlon, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Tax and Climate Policy at the U.S. Department of Treasury, and Lisa Jacobson, President of the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, to have a conversation about tax and climate policy. We're at the edge of our seat. Thank you so much. Please welcome.
Okay, edge of our seats here. Good afternoon, everybody. It's really my pleasure to lead this conversation with Seth Hanlon, who, as we just heard, is Deputy Assistant Secretary for Tax and Climate Policy at the U.S. Department of Treasury. Seth, I've been here since this early morning, and at every panel, tax really has been discussed as a key pillar to moving forward with deploying clean, affordable, and reliable energy efficiency and clean energy. So we couldn't be better served than to have you here with us this afternoon. So
yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, I also, of course, want to thank CRES Forum. BCSE, the Business Council for Sustainable Energy, is a proud gold sponsor this year, but we've been a sponsor of this forum since its inception, and I couldn't be more proud to see how this whole conference has evolved, and the conversations today have been excellent. So to get us started, for those that might not know you or your work specifically, tell us a little bit about your portfolio at Treasury.
Sure. And thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity, and glad this meeting is happening, and there's a lot of excitement here, so very glad to be here. So I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Tax and Climate Policy in the Office of Tax Policy at Treasury. That's a position that the DAS roles, change over time, but it's a newly established, role in the wake of IRA's passage, and so I joined Treasury shortly after IRA passed in 2022. And so in that capacity, I help lead the implementation of the many clean energy tax provisions that were either enacted or substantially modified in IRA, focusing mostly on the regulations and guidance for taxpayers pursuant to all of those provisions. And I'm situated in the Office of Tax Policy, which is together with IRS and IRS Chief Counsel, responsible for for tax regulations and other guidance. It's an office of mostly career attorneys and economists with deep expertise in the tax code and including the energy tax provisions that predated IRA. So this is not a ordinary tax project. It's been a really extraordinary project, and like you said, to have sort of tax at the center of climate policy, because of the bulk of the IRA incentives are in the form of tax incentives. So it's a privilege, but it's also a pretty a profound responsibility that we are taking very seriously.
Well, I could say the work that you've done already has been tremendous, and I know that there's still a lot of work underway in real time. So again, thank you for being here today. Can you just provide a little bit more insight into kind of what the mechanics are, or what the specific aspects of implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act that you've been a part of, or that your colleagues have been working on?
Mm-hmm. So I sort of think about it in three separate buckets. So first is the regulations and guidance. Obviously, the passage of such a huge law creates a need for taxpayer guidance, and so our goal in all that is to provide administrable, workable rules, but the North Star is clarity and certainty for taxpayers so that investments can move forward. And we've been working as hard as we can to do that. IRA is such a sweeping law, 20 different incentives ranging from manufacturing to fuels to energy efficiency to vehicles, generation, obviously carbon capture, and plus the bonuses and the credit monetization provisions that are really brand new types of tax provisions. So we've been working at an accelerated pace in partnership with our colleagues throughout the government to publish as much guidance as we can. as expeditiously as we can. And we've published about 75 pieces of guidance so far, but there's much more to come. And so that's the first bucket. And then in addition to that, I mean, there is just the implementation of all the systems that need to be, that are required to make this law work, and the IRS has done, really had the Herculean task of putting all that together, soon after IRA passed, so that, communities and entities can, claim elective pay, consumers can get tax credits at the point of sale for, clean vehicles. And so that's sort of like standing up the operational implementation is another one of Treasury's key roles. And then also we have, last year Treasury established the IRA Program Office, and that office has the all-important job of essentially getting the word out about all of the opportunities that are available under IRA. And so they've organized hundreds of events and convenings to spread the word, because IRA opened up so many opportunities for new entities, small businesses, governments, tax-exempt organizations to benefit. But we in many instances they don't know about the opportunities and or don't know how to access the credits. So they've been doing a ton to get to work with partners and get the word out about the credits.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly important, and those three areas are fundamental to having success in implementing the IRA. And so, we're just about 2 years after the enactment of the Inflation Reduction Act, and I'm just wondering, from your standpoint, how are you measuring the economic impacts of the IRA, and how does that also help in outreach? The outreach you're doing both on the opportunities, but also, in sharing that on the ground, either with policymakers or communities.
Yep. So, I think we think about the economic impact. So first of all, the bottom line is the IRA is having a hugely positive economic impact throughout the country, and we're seeing it in so many ways. So, I think just on a micro level, one of the things we're seeing, because this is the first year of filing tax returns, so the first year we're actually getting data, on how IRA is working, and so just on the micro level, just IRA's saving families, billions of dollars. So in the first year, like for 2023, it was, I think, 3.5 million families in every state saved, $8.5 billion almost for just that home energy, efficiency incentives, which is, a big increase there. And then in the vehicle space, there's already been, $1.5 billion in credits that consumers have claimed, like at the point of sale, to save on clean vehicles, and then all of that is, in turn saving families on energy costs. And then I think probably the most dramatic impact is just the announcements in clean energy investment and clean energy manufacturing. We've seen $380 billion of new clean energy investments announced since the passage of the IRA. And I think the most sort of tangible and dramatic impact that we're seeing is in manufacturing, which is really exciting to see manufacturing coming back to the U.S. In a dramatic way. And then I think one of the key things, and it sort of gets at the point about bipartisanship, and is where these investments are happening, and so it's truly the law. It was very pointedly has provisions that are intended not just to create jobs, but to create high-paying jobs through the prevailing wage and apprenticeship provisions, and then it has the place-based incentives for investment in energy communities and in low-income communities. And so one of the things that we're most excited about is just where the where the investment is happening, and it's not just benefiting the coasts or one section of the country. It's the opportunities that are created are really dispersed throughout the country. So like 80% of the investments are in counties with college graduation rates that are below the national average. And then something like 3/4 of the investment are in counties with lower than average unemployment. So I think the law is very tangibly working as intended. Not just to spur investment, to reach our climate goals and overall economic goals, but to spread economic opportunity, more equitably throughout the country. And I think that's like, as we look at it, it's one of the reasons we're most excited about that, is that I think that is really going to be key to the law's durability over time.
Right, totally agree, and that sentiment was shared at many of the panels today. We just had a panel focused on rural communities and clean energy, and there too, some of these innovations in the Inflation Reduction Act that make it easier for co-ops to invest affordably and have more access to clean energy is really exciting. So. One other point, I was with a colleague of yours from the Department of Energy at an event earlier this week, and they mentioned something about 1.6 leverage of every dollar from these tax credits can leverage perhaps $6 of investment from the private sector, and that's also really exciting to see, just that opportunity to dramatically increase investment in the energy sector and for clean energy and energy efficiency specifically. So we're focused on implementation. I think everyone's curious to know, what we might expect in the weeks and months ahead. So what can you share with us? I can share, I'm not sure I could share specifics about the sort of timing about what we have planned, which I know, people are curious about, but we have a lot planned, for the rest of the year. We're working hard on many projects, like sort of throughout the scope of IRA. So I don't have specifics on timing, but we have a lot more. We issued the proposed regulations on the 30C alternative fuel refueling property credit just last week, and we have a whole lot more to come. One of the the main things we're working on is the in the areas where we have proposed regulations. We've gotten hundreds, in some cases, thousands of comments, and so processing and really carefully considering and reviewing those comments on which are not just like numerous, but also raise extremely complex issues. Is a key part of what we've been doing, and what we're going to continue to do for the rest of the year. But we hear, I just want to, I can't give specifics, but we do hear, we continue to have an open door policy for stakeholder meetings, and we've had dozens of meetings just in the last couple of weeks where we've heard directly from stakeholders about some of the provisions where they're communicating to us that urgency is that is the guidance is most urgently needed, and we hear that, and we are working as fast as we can to provide guidance as soon as we can. Well, I definitely, again, really essential and massive exercise underway to implement the Inflation Reduction Act tax measures, but your office, your colleagues have been extremely accessible and really appreciate listening to the voice of all stakeholders, but in particular the business community, which wants to access these credits and wants to see that leverage occur so that we can deliver on the ground. So thank you for that. This is actually, I think, my favorite question that I'm going to ask you. Given the many hats you've worn and the current position you're in, what kind of advice would you give to those that want to engage in either implementation or tax policy going into 2025. We know it's going to be a big tax year or set of years. Next Congress is going to be a big Congress on tax policy, obviously in the areas of the energy sector, but also more comprehensively. So what kind of advice would you give? What lessons learned do you have to share for us all?
Sure. So I think, so first of all, please continue to engage with us, on the regulations and guidance. On many of the provisions, on many of the items where we issued initial guidance, the feedback on that guidance was extremely important. You look at an area like the domestic content bonus, where we issued initial guide. That was a priority to get guidance out because it cuts across the provisions and so we got guidance out in May of 2023, but got a host of really helpful, constructive comments in the wake of that guidance, and so that sort of formed the basis of the additional guidance we issued on the domestic content bonus this past May. So I would just sort of emphasize, please continue to engage. The feedback and input is really crucial. Especially on these really complex issues of where tax intersects with energy policy. And then I think in terms of lessons learned, I have my head in IRA tax code provisions every day, and I'm just in the weeds, and then every once in a while I make the mistake of assuming that people know about IRA and know about the opportunities that are available under IRA. We can't assume that, and I think there's just so much work to do, to get the word out about the opportunities for families to save on their energy costs, on energy bills, for small businesses, and then for companies, the companies in the private sector, but also the towns and governments and tax exempt organizations. I mentioned our program office. They've been doing a kind of campaign around the country, partnering with 150 what we've called comeback communities, but these are communities where there's high poverty, but there's been population loss, historically, to ensure that those governments know about the credits, but then also know how to access them. And so, it's really critical, because when we speak to people, it's we simply assume that people know about IRA. They know it's such a historic law, but they really don't. I think they really don't. And we need to tell the success stories. We've been working hard on sort of collecting and communicating success stories to make sure people really know about the opportunities and the impact of this law.
Well, one of the things that I note is Secretary Yellen has been going around the country the last several months, talking to communities. I'm sure, in part talking about what the opportunities to access them are, but also listening. I know she's been doing a lot of listening. Yeah. Anything you can share, about those visits that she's made? And I know oftentimes she'll do a roundtable. She might do a site visit. She might add on another activity so she can have a more holistic view of what's going on in those communities. So I really appreciate that, given all the other responsibilities she has. So just shows her commitment and the commitment of the Department of Treasury. So anything you can share about some of those visits?
Yeah, I think I think largely the takeaway is just the kind of diversity of where IRA is having an impact, and the types of projects that are just super exciting. So she was in North Carolina just recently at Wake Tech Community College, and they're building a new facility to power their campus with solar and geothermal, and there's also a tie-in, with apprentice programs, and so I think she had visited a new battery plant in Tennessee, and was in Arizona, was in Boston, so it's just exciting to see just the diversity and scope of projects that IRA is funding.
So I may go back to one
Helping
implementation question. Tell us a little bit about the interagency, process when it comes, because you were talking about, the 70+ issuances of guidance that you've already released, and I know that the Department of Energy, EPA, other agencies may be involved. What does that look like? And any specific lessons learned for us on that side of it too? Because we've been usually trying to reach out to everybody, and again, people have been very generous with their time given the workload they have. But what's the interagency process like from your vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like I speak to some of our colleagues at the Department of Energy, like, as or more often than some of my colleagues within Treasury. So it's really been like on every project, we have technical working teams, between IRS and IRS Chief Counsel and our team in DOE to kind of help translate tax to the energy folks and sort of translate the science to the tax folks. Although both know a lot about both, but then when you go in a sort of level deeper, you really need the kind of expertise that only the experts at the national labs or Department of Energy can provide. I mean, so we've been working with not just DOE but EPA. With the USDA on many of the projects. Obviously, we're in touch with the White House, and then then there's interagency collaboration with Commerce, the Department of Transportation, just because of the huge sweep of the law. So from a stakeholder point of view, I mean, I think that's the right the right approach to contact everybody, because this really is like a whole of government effort, and there's multiple agencies that are involved in the IRA guidance projects.
So you mentioned in some of your comments before two really important words. One was durability, and the other is bipartisanship. And maybe we can go back to some of the comments you made and dive a little deeper on some of the economic impact work you're doing. How are you seeing that? What's the response you get to that when you're talking either with Congress or at community level? Maybe we can elaborate on those things, because obviously for us, we want to see durable policy, and like you, we're seeing the tremendous economic power and this opportunity to really leverage private sector capital and improve communities. So we want to see more of it, and we want to see it just thrive in the years ahead.
I mean, I think so. It's hard. Obviously, it's hard to sort of prognosticate about, with the world. So I think like largely we see our role as our role is to provide as much clarity and certainty as we can, to get as much investment as we can, so that investment is like tangibly seen, all over the country, and people realize that, if we, Secretary Yellen said, like, if we were to roll back the IRA tax credits, like that would be a historic mistake. Like, the law is saving families on energy costs. It's creating jobs, and rolling it back will roll back that progress and also give a leg up to China and other countries that are competing with the U.S. in manufacturing fields and clean energy. So it's critically important. I mean, I think we see our role as trying to facilitate as much investment as we can. And in the through regulations and guidance, but because hard to prognosticate about the future. But we are. I will say, like, we were definitely very pleased. Obviously, with this gathering and the bipartisan nature of support for the IRA, and then also the letter from Republican House members. To Speaker Johnson about we need to think twice about rolling back this law because it's having such a huge impact in our districts. So we were hugely pleased to see that.
So we're kind of about to wrap up. So again, understanding 2025, 2026, big macro level tax conversations going on at the federal level. we have a group of stakeholders here. What guidance would you give to them as we start to approach thinking about that conversation between the next administration and Congress?
So I think, we have we're starting a sort of storytelling project at Treasury, but it's just crucial to get the word out about the tangible successes that this law is having. I know I've probably said that a few times here, but I sort of can't reiterate it enough. And also just that there was a coalition, IRA. There was a coalition behind IRA, and we really need to stay together as a coalition if there are efforts to roll back the law. So we want to work with you to we certainly are engage with organizations and trade groups and companies that that have projects and want to showcase them. We would love to partner with you in those efforts. Yeah.
Well, I think there probably also is a lot of interest in partnering with I don't remember the exact name of the part of your office that's doing the outreach, because many of us are doing the same thing, whether it be, through working with local governments or working with universities or, Business Council. We've been focusing a lot with small and medium-sized businesses. How do we make sure they understand about these opportunities as they become available? So much work to do.
It's the IRA program office.
Thank you, IRA program office. So the last question, which kind of goes back to a little bit of lessons learned, but anything that particularly surprised you about this exercise that you've been involved in the last 2 years? I mean, given its immensity, anything that sticks out is I would not have expected that.
I think so first of all, I'm just blown away every day by the expertise of my colleagues. I do think one thing that I didn't fully appreciate until, or that I continue to appreciate more and more, is just what an effort it is to make these provisions work just on an operational basis. And so, the elective pay and transferability, the transferability is such a key financing, new financing mechanism. And it's just a completely new thing, that there's a market for tax credits. And the systems that had to be built to set up the IRS Energy Credits Online portal to make that work and to make it possible for entities to register for direct pay and transferability. That's just one example, but it's just an enormous effort involving hundreds and hundreds of people at IRS, the attorney, and everyone has to work together, from the attorneys to the program, the forms instructions team to the engineers, and so that's really impressed me. That's sort of the guts of the operation that's making these provisions work. Something as important as transferability, and it just goes to the importance of having a modernized, well-functioning IRS. I think it's key to making the IRA work.
Well, we want to see the IRA work. We want to continue to be able to work with you and your colleagues in the months ahead. So thank you, Seth, for being with us today. And again, thanks for all the work that you're doing. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you both. That was a very interesting conversation. And now we're going to move away from domestic